Good morning, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to this Indica Books Writers Workshop with Otis. And uh, in case some of you who watch this online, the intent is here to cover and talk a little bit about the proposed evolution of this Writers Workshop series that Indica announced a short while back, and try and answer questions and also try and talk a little bit about the evolution or the future direction of this specific series, which has been the weekly writers workshop with Otis. So, what we have been conducting this writers workshop for a little under 3 years now. We started when the entire world was locked down in the throes of COVID and all, and it served as a very useful platform for inviting people, writers, to submit short pieces of work, 750 to 1,000 pages long, and get feedback on the writing, on the craft, on the art, on the in general suggestions, and have a open discussion around those writing pieces. And we have had more than 90 such sessions uh, in this series. And I can personally vouch for the fact that I have learned a lot. Some of the things, some of the mistakes that I've been making, I think I've at least recognized them, if not tried to correct them. But again, writing is not something like an on-off switch where one day you're not writing well and the other day you flip a switch and you're writing. Pick your favorite Nobel laureate. Okay, it's an ongoing journey. Uh, so that has been very valuable in terms of seeing how to take this to a different level. And we felt that one of the ways is to have first of all, one is to have deeper sessions, because within the confines of 750 to 1,000 words, it is not always possible to bring in all the nuances of a longer scene that you want to get feedback on. You have to use some details. Introduction context is necessarily lost, which can then make it a challenge for someone like you, Otis, to figure out, where to place the scene, whether the pace, the style, the details, all of them are necessarily something that belong. So longer sessions are definitely valuable. On the other hand, we also want to essentially nudge, in a way, writers who have been part of this or even otherwise into becoming full-fledged writers. And when you start out writing a full-fledged book, apart from all the challenges that you will face in coming up with the plot and characters and story and the pacing and everything, the one fear, doubt that keeps nagging you at the back of your mind is what I'm writing, is it good? Not just in terms of the story or the plot or the characters, but does the language itself flow well? Am I making some rookie mistakes that I will be mortified by? Uh, Certain conventions that don't necessarily hold true in Indian languages or foreign languages may be the convention when writing in English. So it's important to know the distinctions, the voice that comes out when I, for example, write in Hindi versus in English. So all of those things led us to this point where we announced these deep one-on-one sessions with Otis, and sponsored and made available by Indica. Very briefly, how they happen, how we are proposing that series is, first of all, if you have a specific book proposal, book project that you have been working on, and you want some focused time sessions with Otis, you should send a proposal to Indica at the namaste@indica.in. I think I will share the blog post announcement that has more details. So send us a proposal. Basically, it's like a book proposal so that we can understand what the book is about, what the topic is about. Because remember that while we love all writing, Indica's focus is more around Indic writing. So it doesn't really matter if the person submitting the proposal is Indian or not, but the subject matter is something we expect to be Indic. Second, we are not, I don't know, there's a better way of putting this, but even in the realm of Indic writing, there is writing that can basically be classified as neo-colonial, racist garbage. We are not interested in supporting or promoting that writing. And unfortunately, there's a surfeit of writing like that. So if you have a proposal like that, we suggest you look at some other avenue for improving your writing. But if you're writing on Indic themes, then yes, make use of this opportunity. Once we get the proposal, based on scheduling and other things, if you want more details, we'll ask for more details, and then we will share these proposals with Otis. You will, Otis, have your own questions as to, if I have to do this, I need some more information, I need something else, or no, I don't want to work on this, and all. Once we get agreement, then we schedule sessions. And those sessions, I think, if I remember correctly, we have said we'd provide up to 8 hours of one-on-one sessions, coaching, workshop with Otis. So it's going to be one-on-one, which means it's going to be private. We will record it. So if you want to access that recording for up to 1 month, 30 days after the recording, that will be available to you. We won't make this public. So if I'm sure that's going to be one concern that some might have. So no, we're not going to make this public unless and until you say that, yes, it's okay, can you make this public? It's going to remain private, and it is most likely going to be deleted after 30 days. There are more details out there on the announcement page where we put this at, but at this point, I'd like to open this up for Q&A, clarifications, questions, and all. Before I do that, sorry, one last point. The Writers Workshop series, for all practical purposes, I think we can take a pause. I'm not going to say let's end it, because I think it's been too useful, valuable for it to end. But I think I would like to suggest that we take a pause. If there are writing pieces that you want to send, perhaps we can have these at a less frequent interval, like once in a week, once in 2 weeks is what we've been having. Perhaps we can make this once in a month. But that, again, we can decide. It's not set in stone as of now. So I'll take a pause here. Fantastic. Let's move on to your to that one submission. Otis. No, all of you are panelists, so you should be able
to. Sunil.
Ram. I have a question.
Ram, please go ahead.
So the one-on-one sessions, is that limited to a certain number of proposals? Is that a finite number, or how is that? Is it like, okay, the 10 best proposals or the 10 that fit, or is that like an open-ended number?
So there's no fixed number to that. I think as of today, we have received 3 proposals so far. So, and I expect once we talk a little bit more about this, we'll get more. So it's not a fixed number. Second, the intent is to encourage people to get into long form writing. Long form writing could be like a novella, which is 10, 15, 20,000 words. It could be a full-fledged novel itself, which is anywhere from 50 to 150,000 words. That kind of length will require some sort of, you can't really do this in an hour, right? You share some pieces from that, maybe 2,000, 3,000 word entire scene, which then you discuss, take feedback, come back, refine it, again, take feedback, improve it, change it, modify it, discuss some other scenes. So basically, you as a writer will know that there are certain things that are not working because of the language or the style. I need some guidance on that. There will also be that, okay, there are different types of writing, scenes, passages that I want feedback on. So the intent is that you devote that chunk of time that you get with Otis on one single writing proposal, a project that you have, rather than say that here's a collection of 10 different pieces I've written over the last 6 months, and let me use this to get feedback on that. I don't think that's really how we want this to work.
The other question that I have is this restricted only to fiction, or is even creative nonfiction something I can submit a proposal on?
Either is fine with us.
Okay.
Otis may have an opinion on that with respect to creative nonfiction. Otis?
Yeah, I was going to say, looking, seeing the group here, for me, I can work with anyone working in any genre, because I'm a multi-genreist. I mean, I'm a writer, so what we do in the genres is we basically I mean, we're rhetoricians, I guess. You know, we're just dealing with language, and we're honing our language to suit a particular form, which creates a kind of avenue that reaches a reader who's looking for that form. And I can work with anybody writing nonfiction, including thesis-driven nonfiction, creative nonfiction, which would include memoir and essay, usually, fiction, whether you're doing a short stories, or whether you're committing to something that's going to be novel length. So, you know, as I look over the group and thinking about the work that we've done over the course of years, I think the question for you as writers, you clearly want to write, and you may even want to be an author. The question now is, what form, what genre do I want to commit to? And you can just look at it as, what genre do I want to commit to for now? We do have to choose a genre. I mean, it can feel unfortunate, but basically the genre is the thing that tells publishers where this is going to go on the bookshelf, which is now a virtual bookshelf, so that readers can find the book and then download it, get it at the bookstore in the olden days, whatever. So, you know, in thinking about this group and working with a number of you, I think that, you know, I think there might be like a little transitional period, and I hope that might work out too. Some people might have an idea of what book they want to write now, but some of you might want to have a conversation with me, and I'm happy to schedule that so that we can talk about what book you might want to try to start working towards. Because that's the first question. Like, you know, Abhinav is talking about there's an application process. I'm not certain what's on the application process, but somewhere there you have to think, well, what book am I going to write? You know, because you have to put that down on the application. This is an important first step for us as writers in terms of getting to actually writing a book, is thinking about and kind of visualizing and even committing in words to what book that's going to be. There are, you know, if I think about Jay, for example, or Ashvani, like two writers who are really writing, to me, you know, great fiction, their book might be a ways off in terms of, like, first they need to write a completed short story, right? That is going to be published in a journal, right? So even though the proposal is for maybe a book of short stories, right? The work is going to be publishing that first short story so that, and actually, I'm sorry, I don't know, Ashvani, you might have publications, and Jay, you might have publications, so forgive me for this example. But basically, you want to publish a short story so that you have the bona fides to then reach a publisher, right? You kind of build these things. You have maybe you have a short story that you can submit to an MFA program or a contest. You win that contest, or you get a publication, and you sort of add to your list of accolades so that you can then move further and put more pressure on a publisher to say, you know, the publisher is like, well, I'm not sure about this new voice or not, but they have publications, they're finding success, so we're going to go ahead and publish their book. So arriving at a book is kind of a set of steps. And that's also going to be true in essay form, for example. So you might think about a book of essays. That's a reasonable proposal, but you need to write, you know, one finished essay and have that published to show that you're writing on that level of publishable work, so that would then lead to having an entire book. I don't know if that helps a little bit, but I can see a number of you. I like that, you know, it's sort of like this program sort of throws down the gauntlet, you know, in a way, and says, you know, okay, you know, are you in or are you out? You know, are you going to try and write a book, or are you going to just keep typing? and I like that pressure. And I think that that's the first place for consideration. When you think about writing a book, for everyone here, you can have a conversation with me. I may say things to you, right? But you should not write a book because of what I say. Writing a book is a serious commitment, an agonizing commitment, and you have to be driven by your passion. What is it that you want to write? The second thing is after you think about what it is that you want to write, I am also going to be hoping that you're doing some reading also, and you can find a book essentially that is like your book. Okay, that means you're not writing the same book, but you're going to write a book that's like that book. Okay, are you going to write a novel that's like this novel? Are you going to write a collection of essays that are like this collection of essays? A group of short stories that are literary short stories like this group of literary short stories, or a group of short stories that are science fiction. Find a book that's like the book that you want to write and understand why that book is successful. You need to write something on par with that book. If it's nonfiction, the same thing. If it's a book, you want to write a book of nonfiction, look at a book of nonfiction that's like your book, maybe in the same. Nonfiction books, as I look at it, are topic-driven books. Fiction, creative nonfiction, memoir, those are universalist, right? They touch upon universal themes. Anyone in the world might read them. Nonfiction is topic-based. Find someone who's writing within your topic and make sure that you're writing something on par with that. Nonfiction can be more difficult because in general, you need to have bona fides, right? That already in those fields to show that let's say you're an academic or you have something that suggests that you can be writing in that topic. Universal stories, obviously you don't need that because we all have our bona fides in the universal realm, right? That depends on us. Can we access those universal issues? Can we access those universal themes? Well, of course we can because we're part of the universal community. So just be aware of that a little bit. But I'm happy to talk with you about what you might write. I think it's great to commit to something. Write it down. I want to write a collection of short stories. And then when you tell me that, I'm going to say, well, we have to write one short story that you're able to get into an MFA program with, win an award with, find publication with. So we need to concentrate because the idea is if you can write that one piece, then you can write 10 of them. That's the idea. And dubious, but that's the idea.
No, absolutely, Otis. And I think the process of thinking about and going about writing a book, I think enforces a certain discipline that may otherwise be lacking when writing short, 500,000 word pieces.
Yes. Okay. I sometimes use the word professionalism. Okay. So what committing to a book does is it basically moves us from being, it's not aficionado, a dilettante. It moves us from a dilettante to a professional level. If you're writing a book, and I will suggest this, I suggested to Abhinav already that you consider writing a kind of writer's bio in the application, but I don't know if that's part of it or not. But one thing you should be thinking about.
I would say that look at it as you would write a book proposal when wanting to send this to a publisher, and a book proposal, among other things, does contain the book title, the synopsis, the target audience, the demographic, the author's biography, what they have written, if anything, before, a little bit about themselves. So just go about it like you would if you were to sit down and want to submit a proposal to a publisher. Try and do this as perhaps a last step before finishing your draft and saying I'm going to send this out to publishers now, or maybe I'll send this out to an agent. So I want to have this as refined, polished as I think it can be. And I think these sessions will form an important, vital part of giving that completed look to your work.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't look. I mean, a book proposal is a very pretty serious professional document. I mean, you're not going to be able to really have a book proposal of the type that you give to a publisher. In fact, that is something that I can help you work on. If you want to write a book proposal, book proposals are generally for nonfiction. They are not for memoir, right? A memoir is dependent on your ability to write, your ability to access these universal issues, basically. Fiction is also not based on a book proposal, but nonfiction in a topic is. So if you're writing nonfiction in a topic, you will eventually have to have a professional book proposal, which has all the things that Abhinav is talking about, plus 2 sample chapters. And it will have basically a synopsis of the entire work. When you write a professional book proposal, you've done everything except for write the entire book. So if you see those like 10 minutes to writing your book proposal, books, you can buy them, but you can understand that it's not going to take you 10 minutes. Okay. A book proposal is a very serious document. It is basically the book without any, there's not much wiggle room. But what I wanted to say about moving from the dilettante to the professional is just this. When you think about writing a book, think about becoming a professional writer. That means you do not write because you're inspired to write. It doesn't mean that you write because you walked through the park that day and you saw, a leaf blow into the garden and then had a metaphor in your head. That's not it. You settle down to do some writing. It is simply hard work. You want to be doing it, look at your life. Look honestly at your life. Can you write a book? It's a major commitment. Is your family going to be happy with you because you're living in a world of your own all the time? Are you going to be able to sustain your job? Are you going to have to quit your job? Are you going to have to find some other way to have some money? These are things that you have to think about as a professional writer. I will want you to think about that, because if we're working together, my expectation is of that kind of professionalism. It's not professionalism like you're a great writer. That will take care. We'll work on that. But the professionalism of a commitment that you actually can fulfill in your life as it's really lived, that is the issue.
I completely second that, Otis, because here's the thing, folks. And I'll be a little frank here. Something like this is okay. Let's go about this logically. The first is that a professional service like this is something that a lot of us, if you go back in time 10 years back, we would have given our left arm and a leg to have access to this kind of a service, number one. Number two, this doesn't come cheap. Yes, you can go to Chat GPT and Grammarly and get something out of there. I'm not sure how much your writing will actually improve as a result. Nothing good comes for cheap. The best things in life are free, yes, but the next best things can cost an arm and a leg. And the third, because it is being provided as a service by Indica, should not diminish its value or utility. So if you think you're not ready yet, if you think that, but yeah, this is good, let me try it out. If I don't like it, I'll stop coming for the sessions. I'll stop replying to emails. I don't think that is expected. I don't think that is professional or courteous. So, we completely understand if you want to wait 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then submit something. But if you do, please make sure that you know what you're getting into, what might be involved. If, say, for example, you submit a piece as part of your session, you get feedback, you don't rewrite it. or you rewrite it and it looks exactly the same. I mean, even Microsoft Word can't tell the difference apart. I don't think that's going to help either you or us all, and certainly not Otis. So I completely second what you're saying. A minimum level of professionalism is a must have. I mean, goes without saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think going back to the book proposal, having a concept, for that book proposal, understanding that you need to conceptualize something that's going to represent. So Aristotle talks a lot about unity. There needs to be some kind of unity to the work that you're presenting. So while it is going to be like some other book, and you should understand that that's the level that you must arrive at, it also has to be unique. This is a lot to talk about and to think about. But yeah, with the passion, that's what. Okay, so there's a saying. Let's see. I hope I can remember it. If you're going to be a writer, you will. But if you're not, you never will. It's like that's ponder that. Ponder that. You have to come in. I know. I mean, I teach. I've taught professional. I've taught MFA students, for example. And when I teach MFA students, I know that 90% of them are going to become lawyers. So nothing against lawyers, but 90% will become lawyers. Only 10% will actually be writers. And that's at the MFA level. So you have to really come in, to do the work. And I think that's something that I did bring in when I went into the MFA program. I did not know anything about point of view. I didn't know any of those things. But I sat there and I was being taught by people, and maybe I thought I was smarter than they were or not. Not really. I was just like, what are they talking about? I did not know. And I grappled with it and tried to understand why they were saying it. Not that they were saying it, but why were they saying it? And that has driven me. And I wanted to succeed. I mean, I just would not have it be otherwise. So, yeah, and here, like I say, I am happy. I mean, a number of you I've known for many years, and I consider you friends, and I hope that we can talk about it. You can reach out to me if you want to talk about what kind of book or what kind of direction you want to go. I would appreciate that, and I really want to see some of you. Again, the book is a lofty goal. It is hard to write an entire book, but think about committing to writing that short story that's publishable. Think about writing that thesis statement, right? That introduction to your book that is absolutely compelling. Think about writing the first chapter. We have to take it incrementally. If you're going to write essays, read some really great essays, right? And write a really great essay. So these are, we need to take things into pieces, right? It's exciting. It's exciting. And also know that if you are submitting something, and right now I really don't know, my time is limited, so I only have so much time in the week. I have my own work to do, and I obviously have my own family, and I have made my own professional writer's life. So, it may be that I can work with some people for some while, and then spots will open up, and it will go in time. So, yeah, back to you, Abhinav.
Thank you, Otis. So This is an introduction to the one-on-one writing sessions with Otis. If you have questions, you can make use of the WhatsApp group we have, or you can go on to the Facebook Indica Book Club group and post questions, and we can have a discussion there. And we will share more details as we finalize things and we evaluate and then come up with the we share those proposals projects with Otis. So those of you who have submitted proposals, and I think we've got 3 so far, so we will be moving ahead on this. And let's return to our normal programming, Otis, one last time.
Okay. I have one piece from Sweta today, and I know that also she emailed me, and so she's said that she's already applied. So some of my comments about her work, I think, will be, sort of Sweta, necessarily brief. And I've actually already incorporated some of them into what we were talking about today. So, let's see full screen. Hi, Sweta, how are you? Sweta, are you there? I can hear the...
She's been having some network connectivity issues, I believe. I'm not sure how stable or fast her network connection is. So Shweta, if you can reply on chat, if you can hear us, and if so, then perhaps Otis, you can go ahead with with reviewing her submission.
Okay, great.
Maybe if she switches off her video, the audio might become clear.
Right. One of the things that I suggested you can do is hide you can hide basically everyone so that you don't see their video coming in. That should improve bandwidth. And yeah, let me see if she has, yeah. Okay.
Let me draw this up, I think. So Sweta might be, she's frozen now as far as I can see. Go to this. But her work is an example of nonfiction. So maybe that's good as a sort of introduction to a little bit of what I'm talking about, particularly in regard to looking for books that are sort of going to be like the book that you're envisioning. So when you think of the thing that you're driven to write about, right? We don't want to try and control that. Everyone needs to go their own direction. You want to imagine probably that you are not absolutely the first person to take a look at that, but you're going to bring your unique voice and vision to that work. So in the case of Sweta's work, it seems to me that she's writing about folklore. So the creation of humans from the Nicola nut in pygmy mythology. So mythology, folklore, I'm not sure of the distinction. I'm not a folklorist, but I'm actually pretty interested in folklore because I am a short story writer, a novelist, and these are modern, that's modern folklore, essentially. So it does happen, and I'm not sure, Sweta, that this is the right book for you. You have to determine for yourself. But like, I happen to be reading this book. It's
the king, the king and the corpse. This is Bikram and Betal.
Yeah, this is Henrik Zimmer. You might know it.
Yeah, Henrik Zimmer. Yeah. He is a famous Indologist, German Indologist.
Yeah,
And
he
so it
is.
must be a reference to Vikram and Betar. I'm very sorry, my screen got cut off. Everything was frozen. That's why I couldn't hear what you might
Oh,
have
okay.
said before. So I
Oh,
just
really?
relogged in.
Okay. So I was just saying that your work here is an example of what I was talking about earlier about, when we think that we're writing a nonfiction book in a certain topic, that we want to find a book that is kind of like ours. We're going to be bringing our own perspective to it, maybe dealing with different material, but we want to do something that looks like this other book.
Yeah.
So your work now, which is beginning something that's like a chapter, in a larger book, it made me think of this book, which I'm actually reading because, it's folklore. As writers, we're modern folklorists, in our way. So when I think about your work versus this work right now, there's a certain format that he uses in his chapters. But before I get to that, I want to get to something else. So he has chapters that have a certain kind of patterning. They have a pattern. You want to take a look at, let's say, his pattern, and then you want to do something similar, probably, because human beings were pattern makers. And so when we get used to a pattern, we like to see that same pattern again. It's not that we can't perceive a different pattern, but only incrementally. If it's too different than what we're used to, we reject it. We're confused. So we want things to form a kind of pattern. He's writing an entire book, so he has basically a title that suggests some kind of unity for the entire book. So there's an overarching thing, even though he's dealing with specific folk tales individually throughout the book in different chapters. And a very, very good place to look if you're writing nonfiction, look at the table of contents of a book. I'm sure you can pick up this book yourself, but it doesn't have to be this book, it can be any book. But look at the table of contents. How did this writer decide to organize their book, right? The title suggests an overarching theme for the entire book. So this is the thing that, in this case, Zimmer is bringing to the topic of folklore. He's bringing his own vision that's expressed in the title, and that's the unity of the entire book, even though he's dealing with specific pieces. Then what he does is in each chapter, he presents the folklore. So he tells the story first. Then he analyzes it second. And then he draws it into his larger theme that includes all of the pieces.
Okay.
Basically 3 things. And so and I think that I'm reading this book, and so personally, I'm a little bit more interested in the folklore than the analysis of the folklore, because I can draw my own analysis. But I've been drawn to the book because of his largest theme, basically. This idea, here it says, the king and the corpse, tales of the soul's conquest of evil, right? So I'm interested in that. That's what drew me to this book. So I basically read the story. I just read a little bit of his analysis of the particular story, and then I read some of his concluding remarks, and then I move on to the next one. So it's working brilliantly for me, and I'm really enjoying it. So my suggestion is, I don't know that this is a good example for your book and what you're envisioning writing, but if it were, I would suggest to you that you have your work follow a similar kind of pattern that is really understandable. So the main thing that I notice in your work is I never actually hear what this myth is. Let's say, and if you think about Zimmer is not translating the myth. He's not. For example, he has the myth from King Arthur's court. he's not putting the Old English onto the page. He's actually just writing the narrative in his own style. I like that, but that's a choice. You have to make a choice about how are you going to represent it. How do you even know what the myth is? I mean, do you know the Pygmy language? Is it done by a translator? Who is it based on? All of those little pieces, basically, and the presentation of those pieces builds what, and this is for everyone, when we're writing nonfiction, builds our ethos. I do not know whether he is accredited, whether he's won awards, whether he's published. I don't know any of those things, but his ethos, the carefulness in which he presents information, his fastidiousness, even though he departs from that and he definitely engages in some language that is creative, right? His ethos is such that I accept everything that he's telling me. I don't question it.
Okay.
Without those patterns, without that fastidiousness, as in your work, I do question the ethos. It's not that you don't have it. It's not that you don't have the bona fides to write on this topic, but I'm not seeing the care in the prose that allows me to say, I trust this author to be telling me everything and it's true. When you make an assertion of some kind, I think to myself, what is that based on? How is she able to make this assertion? I don't have the ethos that allows that to carry through, if that makes some sense.
Actually, when I started writing this piece, this was not for the main project. This was something I did myself for something that I was having a problem with, because my project was basically on African traditional religions and I had to write a middle grade novel for that. And the more I sort of try to get information on African traditional religion, unlike Indology, which is a field where we have so many books available, African traditional religions are, there's so many. In fact, the number of languages you have in Africa, you have some 2,000 languages. So each language would be linked to a religious tradition. But the problem was that for me, I was not able to understand the religious tradition. So I got a few books on ATRs, which is African religious traditions, and they would all talk about ancestor worship, spirit worship, nature worship, animism, but they would not give concrete examples. So what I thought was, why don't I undertake a project wherein I myself do myth analysis after myth analysis of different folk tales. And this was taken from or African origin myths. It's a famous Penguin classic book by Stephen Belcher, and it's a classic. And this has only origin myths from across Africa. So I didn't retell it because in any case I had not translated it. So I understand that for the reader it's not making any sense. But my objective here was to do like maybe 100 or 200 of these essays, so that I understand, I draw something from it, and I understand African traditional religion from in a more in a way that is more authentic.
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. It sounds like you're writing this piece really as a way to help you think through.
Yes.
So now we have to make a distinction between, so when you send it to me, what I think is is this a publishable work or not, and what makes it publishable? So our development work, I mean, this is what I would call development work. You're basically doing development work, and I do this I basically consider those drafts, because they're drafts on the way to something that's going to be publishable finally, because I'm going to keep working on them. But development work, if this is development work that you're doing for then this other book that you're writing, it becomes difficult. It's like, if you're giving it to me, I'm just thinking about what makes this publishable, because I'm thinking about myself as a reader who's coming to something that's publishable. And then if it's not publishable, or if I'm feeling like it hasn't reached that level yet, then I'm trying to work on what's going to make it so. I would suggest that you apply some kinds of formalism to these essays so that they could be publishable, right? So do that groundwork ahead of time. You need to have some kind of context. So just as this book, right? This book develops, it has an introduction. He has a certain, he basically has a thesis in his mind about what he's doing. You should come up with a similar thesis and have that, right? You need to come up with all the things that are in a book, you need to compress down into an essay and bring that to this essay and bring a kind of, that's maybe again, a little bit of that sort of professional intent. You finally, everything that we write, we want to be bringing that material along to something that's going to be publishable. Okay. So you want to have some purpose. Even though the translation is available, you probably have to type it out and you have to attribute it, and put it into this work. And then you have to have an introduction to this essay, right? That suggests your thesis. And then you have to engage in some analysis. And then you're finally going to arrive at some conclusions.
Okay.
And then that way you have something that at least has a format, that a reader is going to expect if they were then to read this. And I think that though this comes back to, so there's a topic and you're going to be writing about folklore and it has been written about, but I think you also need to do some thinking about what are you bringing that's unique to this work? How are you making it new? And I think that when I look at this, I see you basically looking at these indigenous myths from an indigenous perspective, not a colonial perspective. And I think that that's the thing that you're adding to it, but I'm just guessing. And I think that that might be something that you consider a little bit as you, you mentioned the Penguin Classic, and yes. And even here Zimmer too, right? I mean, all of these works are basically being done by what we could consider the colonial mind, the objectifying mind. And that's what they do when they're looking at the folklore, is they objectify the experience. And I think a little bit what you're bringing is more of a non-colonial or indigenous mind coming and looking at the work from maybe a more of an indigenous perspective. You're actually developing almost a new, I forget the fancy words for this, but basically a new way to understand maybe a kind of anthropology through the subject's own perspective. I mean, you're trying to bring it closer. You're not trying to have a colonial perspective. Yeah. So I would make that an overarching theme probably, or think about it and develop it and see how you can apply that to this work. And then actually, that's what you want to finally be arriving at. How does your interpretation of this differ from the colonial perspectives that we've already seen? That's your addition. So, you want to think about all those things, and then when you write this piece about this singular creation myth, you want to think about it as, okay, this is something that you want to be able to stand alone as an essay that you publish, and you want it to be included, maybe slightly tweaked, in a book that's going to be larger, and that is a book project. Then, together with that project, so now look, you've taken what is research and you've made it into a book project, and now you also have another book project to write this book for middle schoolers. So that's another project. So you have two. Great. Yeah. All we have to do as writers is figure out where we're going to get time and money, because we have plenty of projects.
No, but I actually want to study Africa. So it is something that is of genuine interest to me. So it is It's something that I want to do. The reason I wanted to do a non-fiction kind of a project here was because I felt that with writing fiction, I was not getting the right understanding. So I wanted the correct understanding and then move on to creating fiction based on some genuine understanding or at least some original thinking.
Yeah. When you think about the fiction, have you read Mario Vargas Llosa's The Storyteller?
Which one? Oh, sorry. Actually, my screen is getting cut.
I'm worried.
Yeah, my screen is getting frozen.
Okay. I was just saying, do you know Mario Vargas Llosa's The Storyteller?
No, I've heard of him, but I haven't read this. No, I haven't
Read that one. So that's a great fiction. That's a great fiction that involves sort of mythology in the Amazon jungle. And it's a fabulous story. So I wouldn't say it's middle school, it's because philosophically it's more difficult than that. But it's not to say that it couldn't be read at that level. But that's a book to think about in terms of a fictionalizing of mythology. It's really fabulous. I read it years ago, and it's definitely one of the books that I'm very thankful that I read. It's really helped me. Well, it looks like you have kind of two books. And if you're interested in Africa and African mythology, then that also suggests a path. Write an essay, write a really good essay. Maybe I don't know where your life is at, but think about going to African university and studying, and make a path. We make our professional paths in order to pursue, honestly, our writing. So it's like, I mean, the thing that's constant is I want to do the writing because I love what's happening in my mind when I'm doing the writing. So now what do I do to find that information, to do the research? Do I need to go into the jungle to hear these stories for myself? And the answer there is yes, you do.
Yeah.
So figure out how to make that possible. That's part of our professional life path.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I was reading a very famous book, *Sapiens*, and in which it is mentioned that most of the people who think about mythology, or they think about folklore, or they think about arts of the ancient people, they are speculating. So they are saying that volumes and volumes are written, but are these volumes actually based on genuine understanding of what those people thought of when they created those works of art? Or is it based on what the researcher thinks that the work of art should have represented?
Just one thing I'll point out is Harari is the Malcolm Gladwell of these times. Don't put a lot of store by what he writes. He writes, he dumbs down history to the point of absurdity.
Yeah, there's actually a concept called interpretatio Graeca. So, for example, all the writers who basically rewrote the Roman and the Greek legends, they were basically the Christian fathers, who were rewriting it, preserving it in Latin and others. So the interpretation was basically based on, their thinking. For example, there will be only a one Zeus, though there has been there is actually in the stories itself the idea of multiple Zeus, multiple Apollos, multiple Thutmos, even in the Egyptian interpretations. So when somebody is writing it, they are also what their understanding of the world is. So there can be only one god or one type of god. So that they call interpretatio Graeca. And later on, same thing, Snorri Sturluson does a very good. He captured the Norse legends, but again, he's interpreting it through what his worldview is and what his readers can read and understand.
Well, Pranshu too, like what I tend to think about in this topic, and Swetha, what you're talking about here too, is I think about the difference between oral cultures and literate cultures. And again, that's not a transition that happens. There was an oral culture and then there was a literate culture. No, yep. most of there were a few people that were literate, few people,
very few,
right? But the thing that's common with all rhetoric is that once you have rhetoric, once you have something written down, you have stasis. So
and that drives it forward.
Stasis theory, that something exists in time, that there was a past, that there's a future, and that there's this thing. That does not exist in oral cultures. We could argue. I don't know. Do I know? I don't know. But I think it doesn't exactly exist, because you don't have something that's ever fixed in time. We know that the only thing that doesn't change is that things are always changing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So everything is in transition all the time. There is no boy, right? There is no girl. There's nothing that becomes contained in a single spot. There is no Zeus. I mean, Pranshu's example, I think, is an excellent one. Of course, there wasn't a single Zeus, because there's no idea of singularity. There is no singularity. So
exactly.
Because there's no stasis. And with stasis, notice that there's also position, because once there's position, I, for example, there's also you. But there wasn't that before there was stasis. Without stasis, there's no I and you. It's fascinating to me. And then, you know, I'm a big fan of he's called a Jewish mystic, you know, which I don't like, this idea of mysticism, because that's a kind of, what is that even saying? But anyway, Martin Buber, you know, talks about I and thou. What is I and thou, except for there's no difference between oneself and another. There isn't me and you, and Buber talks about I and it, right? So there's I, and then there's an object, it. That is a development of rhetoric. And if you think, and Pranshu has the example of, I'm studying Latin actually right now on Duolingo, but if we think of that, right? Even the translation from Latin and the patterns of Latin into the patterns of English create a completely different way of thinking about it. So on some level, there's no doubt that the way, I'm not even just a colonial, anyone working in English, considering the mythologies of an oral culture, cannot possibly be thinking about it correctly, because it cannot translate into language correctly.
Yes.
That's a fascinating, I was also extremely lucky in college to read Walter Ong's Orality and Literacy, which is a kind of a difficult read, but I mean, Walter Ong is, and that work sort of definitely, you know, colored my experience from then on, thinking about language and storytelling and all the rest of it in really fascinating ways. Pursue it, Swetha, pursue. But pursue with a desire to write that kind of material that will be able to be understood and read and illuminate your reader through some kind of published form. You know, it's very hard. You know, you're talking about things here that are complex, and we're finally limited. And I find this all the time too. I want to communicate something that's hard to communicate, and I have to communicate it with language, right? Which ends up limiting the scope of it tremendously. And that is your problem, but it's also, having problems is what writers love. Figure out how to overcome those things and realize that the basic forms of writing, the fact that we have to follow patterns, the fact that we have to use language itself that ends up being ordered in both a linear way, but also has a kind of degree of circularity to it, that these issues of language are necessary for us to deal with. When I was in the MFA program, I'll go back to, I listened to people talking, and I was like, I wasn't just trying to learn things by rote. I was trying to understand why they were saying that. Why did I have to do it that way? And I had to do it that way because I needed to communicate with other human beings. And so we do have to follow certain forms because we are trying to communicate with other human beings. That does create degrees of limitation because of our medium. Great. Let's have fun.
Excellent. Otis, thank you so much. And folks, I hope you will make use of this opportunity. I intend to, not immediately, but in the coming months, as I get one book project off the ground, I will make use of this because just based on my experiences with sending you writing pieces and your gentle way of striking me over the head about point of view inconsistencies. I think I've learned my lesson. I hope, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity. So you can go to indica.in, and this is an announcement on one-on-one sessions with writing coach. So please take a look at that. Send us your proposals, and we'll evaluate all of them. Look forward to seeing some writers emerge out of this program. Otis.
Abhinav, it occurred to me too that, so I've been trying to get Abhinav's book, but I think that he should send me one, so we can vote on that, whether that's, but Abhinav, I think we should through Indica, we should have a panel discussion on your book. I think that would be great. I would love to be part of that, and then maybe we'll have a few other writers that will be able to, sit with you and ask you some questions and talk about your work.
There is one on 24th, right, Abhinav?
So yes, why don't we have Otis as a panelist and all? So once it is okay, so good you remind that, Pranshu. So yes, Otis, on the 24th of September, Pranshu and a couple of other kind folks in the US are organizing a panel discussion, an Indica panel discussion on my book. So once we have the details finalized, one of the challenges has been to get a copy of the book to Pranshu and others, and because a Kindle edition is not available, I think the turnaround time for the delivery of the physical book is about, I think, 2 weeks or so. So once we have the dates finalized, we'll share that with you, and you can, would love to have you as a panelist and talk about that book.
Okay, so, you won't be able to get me by the 24th, but we'll because I will not be able to read your book by the 24th. But get me, I'd like to see a copy of that book, and then I would like to be part of a panel. So I think that would be a lot of fun. Maybe it can be a little bit different. I don't know how your panel will be organized, but we can have a panel too that's really, about the writing and
absolutely.
That would be great.
Because a panel discussion that talks only about the book can get very boring. I think it's good to have a discussion on things related to writing, related to the topic on the book.
Let's put that on our docket, Abhinav. I look forward to that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Otis. And folks, I'll share a link to this to today's sessions once it is available on YouTube. And thank you.
And if some of you want to reach out to me, you have my email, I think, already, and want to have a half-hour discussion or a little bit about a book and how to approach this, I welcome that. So that would be great. It would make me sad if I don't see you. So we have to deal with this transition a little bit. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.